I'm speaking on power, light. We're all familiar with Genesis chapter 1, yes? Verse 1, where God said, let there be light. And what happened? NEPA happened. Children who grew up in the 80s and 90s in Nigeria probably learned to say up NEPA before they could write their names. Yes? Up NEPA was a national chorus. The only other national chorus we know, which comes a distant second, is when we all shout, go. You know, when Super Eagles scores a goal, the whole country goes, go. You know that feeling, yes? But Up NEPA naturally reoccurred every day in our lives. Simply put, Up NEPA could mean anything to anybody. It could mean that at 4 p.m., if there was light, you'd see your favorite cartoon show. You know then, in the 80s, TV stations were state-owned. And depending on your state, TV opened at 4 p.m. Up NEPA could mean that you weren't going to grind that pepper that mommy said you should grind with mortar. Up NEPA could also mean, for those of us who grew up in Bendel State, I don't know how many of you know what they call grinding stone. So once you hear Up NEPA, it means you've been redeemed from grinding stone. Yes? Now, the national chorus, which was Up NEPA, defined us. And as in everywhere in the world, as our population increased, so did the energy needs of the people. I'll take us through the journey of power in Nigeria. There are 3 levels or 3 periods that we identify. One of them, pre-1900s. Pre-1900s, energy needs were basic. It was served by burning firewood. You know, that was pre-colonial era. From 1912 to about 1950, our needs were minimal. We generated about 150 megawatts. It served the protectorates. Then we had industrial estates in parts of Lagos, Enugu, Kanu. So those 150 megawatts could just get us by. Now, from 1952 till 2013, Nigeria grew from 150 megawatts to 5,000 megawatts. Can anybody relate to that? Population growth went up by the millions, right? And what became of us? Why did we fail to improve power as our population increased, as was the case with other countries? I may not have all the answers, but let me share a few thoughts. Let's just say that in 1970, an automobile company made a car called the National Grid. Yes? And every 5 years, the auto company upgraded the National Grid. Nigeria bought the car called National Grid in 1970. And we failed to purchase any upgrade version as the years went by. But we expected that vehicle to give us the same performance over time. We expected the vehicle to travel the same distance and even carry more load over time. And a 40-year-old car is a 40-year-old car. It's at best an antique. It's meant for a museum. True or false? So, Recently, we ran through a process of privatization. And NEPA, as we know it, was broken down into about 11 companies. And then there came the gas companies, the GenCos, and then transmission companies. The GenCos got fuel in form of gas. I mean, the big GenCos are the ones who use gas today. They got fuel in form of gas from the international oil companies. And that amount of power forced into, if you saw one of the big movies in recent times, Fast and Furious, you see where they have to inject nitro into the car, yes? And makes the car accelerate. So that gas-powered plant meant that we had improved our form of power generation from the old days of just Kainji Dam and Co. Now, that nitro was thrown into the same old car of 1970. And what happened? The car started to break down. We started hearing about grid collapse, yes? Where you wake up and the whole country is in darkness. So, this gas, which enables over 60% of our power generation, is valued in dollars. So if an international oil company produces gas in Nigeria to feed the gas plant, which generates power for you and I, that gas is charged in dollars. Does that make sense to you? The gas is produced here naturally, but it's charged to us in dollars. So what happens? Between 2015 and 2017, in 2015, the discos, NERC, and some of us agreed to meet and agree on how we should charge for electricity. It's called the multi-year tariff order, MITO 2015. And at that point, the dollar was 198 naira. $1 was 198 naira. Between then and now, dollar has more than doubled. So the cost of the man's production has doubled. But what happened? Tariff has stayed the same. But not to jump it. Nigerian government charges the IOC a 10 naira penalty for every standard cubic feet of gas that is flared. The cost of producing a unit of power in Nigeria is 18 naira. Thus, it is cheaper to flare gas in Nigeria than to produce power in Nigeria. It's a natural business model. If you're the international oil company, what would you do? You'd flare your gas and pay the 10 naira. Yes? And where does that leave us? Our tariff, don't forget that I said initially that cost of production has doubled. Our tariff, which is the cost that is charged you and I for power, is pegged by Nigeria so that the common man, you and I, can, in quotes, afford power. Same thing for fuel, same thing for electricity. Essentially, policies have never allowed energy to thrive in Nigeria. When I say this in certain places, people tell me, dude, you're a capitalist. You want to rip off the poor man. But let's look at it this way. Let's go down. The next problem we want to look at is the fact that, okay, let me use this example. I held a session with some journalists. There were about 20 of them, all grown-ups. And I asked them, which of you in this room has never paid a utility staff to keep your wire up when you were owing? And none of them, okay, 2 of them put their hands up. Of the 2 of them, none of them had ever paid the bills in their home. One of them was a lady. She moved from her father's house to her husband's house, and her husband had never handed over that responsibility of making bill payments. Thus, she had no idea of how those negotiations happen. So, If 18 out of 20 people in a room full of Nigerians could admit to bribing a staff to keep their wire up, do the maths. Now, according to the discos, the distribution companies, they lose 30% of their revenue annually to electricity theft. Electricity theft is meter bypass, it's hooking, it's tapping from your neighbor, and electricity theft in Nigeria accounts annually for over 100 billion naira in losses in 1 year. A transformer, a 500 kVA transformer, which can feed about 200 homes or thereabout, costs about 5 million naira, or a little over. So, essentially, we have seen how much of a curse we are to ourselves. According to NEC, National Electricity Regulatory Commission, Nigeria has over 7 million, a little over 7 million, but less than 8 million electricity customers. Nigeria is 180 million people, yes? Now, according to the 2006 census, Nigeria has 26 million homes. In 2006, we had 26 million homes. In 2017, we have less than 8 million customers. Of the 8 million customers, only about 3.5 million of them are metered. And of the 3.5 million who are metered, less than 3 million pay their bills monthly. I'm also feeling terrible reading out the statistics. Now, the man who distributes power has seen his cost increase, but his fee has not increased at the same pace. The human factor means that the way, all the way back to the top of the chain, we cannot complete the process of offering a service from the line of pushing the power to the customers and the reverse motion of the customers paying for the service. Where does that leave us? In summary, policies guiding power supply in Nigeria fails to look at three key things: the business owner, who I've described, the cost of providing the essential service, and unfortunately, the Nigerian, whose minimum wage still stands at 18,000 naira. That's less than $100 a month. So is it all gloom and doom for us as Nigerians? I don't think so. I think there's hope for Nigerians. If we can think through the process, we may just be able to salvage ourselves. Let me share the other side of the statistics that we face. Between Lagos and Calabar, we have over 800 kilometers of coastline. From Abuja to the northernmost borders of Nigeria, there's over 12 hours of daylight for over 6 months in a year. Now, the Lagos to Calabar coastline, which is also the subject of the railway today, creates enough room for wind turbines along the coast. If you stand at the beach, all of that breeze that hits you is energy that we are wasting. That energy can be converted either through wind or through wave. And that can feed the creeks along the coastline. The difference between that and what we have today, let me not go there yet. When you look at what Abuja has, to the northernmost tip of Nigeria, 12 hours of sunlight. It is about the same amount of average sunlight in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has launched a 3.5 megawatt solar farm. Saudi Arabia produces more oil than Nigeria, and they are a richer country than Nigeria, higher GDP, and they've migrated. But we have all of that sun wasting. Can we teach our children to recycle? Let me close this. Nigeria produces over 500 million tons of organic waste annually. 500 million tons of organic waste can give us, when you convert through a process called anaerobic digestion, we can produce gas, which can push out over 100,000 megawatts of power. That is over 20 times what we produce today. We're not even talking about smart grids. We are not talking about taking out bulbs from communities and offering them cheap options. If we do not take our chances with what we have, with our alternative sources, we would have created death for ourselves through the use of fossil fuels. We cannot assess how much damage we're causing ourselves from gas flaring. The onus lies on you and I. We either want to change or we'll die. Thank you.